Is your company one of the 93% surveyed, indicating they are ineffective at forming strategy? Companies successful in forming strategy use a strategic decision process. Foresight Business Consulting is developing an online course that teaches a new strategic decision process. You can enroll as a founding member at a fabulous discount during Foresight's crowdfunding campaign. Visit the Lean Strategy Masters campaign page at bit.ly/Lean Strategy Masters or search for Lean Strategy Masters on Indiegogo.com.
Savvy Business Radio runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina at savvybusinessradio.com.
Today we're joined by personal growth coach, personal branding strategist, and peak performance mentor, Adèle McLay. And today she shares her personal story of entrepreneurship and how you can reach your own passionate, extraordinary life, and find out more at AdèleMcLay.com. Hi, Adèle. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you?
Thank you so much, Christina. I'm fabulous. It's really lovely to be talking to you.
Oh my gosh, it's fabulous being on with you too. We met several months ago. We've had to wait a few months to get together and record this interview, but you've had such an extraordinary story and you're going to share it with our audience today. But you've also now helped women and entrepreneurs around the world reach their fullest potential. And I mean, that is just so fabulous. Before we go to sharing all of that, share with our audience a little bit about your backstory and what brought you to being a business growth coach.
Thank you. Well, I'm from New Zealand. You might be able to tell that from my accent, and I live in London. And way back in the 80s, I trained as an accountant. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. Never wanted to go into that profession, so went into banking. And that was just before the other share market crash, the one of 87. I was in banking. Anyway, just cutting through the banking story, it wasn't going to be the career for me, so I moved out and got into consulting and eventually set up my own consulting practice supporting New Zealand's, largely their largest corporates, to be more successful. It was a business transformation business and we had a recruitment piece as well, and I built that into a multi-million-dollar business. At the same time, I did a lot of governance work and charitable governance work. And then my world changed and I entered into a more of a portfolio career for a while where I did loads of different things. In 2006, we decided to come to the UK, where we've been ever since. It was really a case of, well, what do I want to do going forward? And I'm very committed to the evolution and development of small and medium-sized businesses. So I've been focusing all of my work on supporting small and medium-sized businesses to grow, to be sustainably profitable, because so many of them are not profitable or they're only marginally profitable. So many business owners are really self-employed. It's just them and really they're not sustainable businesses. So I'd like to think that I'm doing my bit in a whole range of ways to support more businesses around the world to be sustainably profitable. And over time, I would really like to think that those businesses will get to a point where they can employ another person or more people. And if every small business that currently is just a person of one or two could employ yet another person, imagine the difference that would make in the world to our employment situation. And a lot of it's about upskilling. So a lot of the work that I do is about ongoing learning and either teaching content myself or collaboratively through my business, small business, huge success, collaboratively teaching business skills to that community.
Wow. Adèle, what I really, really liked about your story is that I think often we go through life, and I've had a lot of business owners on who actually started later in life. They were actually maybe working in some corporate job like I was, or maybe staying home with their kids, but then decided later in life that I see myself doing something else to help the world, but is that something that's really possible right now, being my age and such? And actually age is irrelevant. And we have more than one talent in our being. And I think, like my mom used to say, you do one thing for the rest of your life and then you retire and then you die. And I love so many different topics and so many different talents. Why limit ourselves? So that's what I really enjoyed about hearing your story, is that you decided, hey, I think I can take a go at this and try a whole new thing, becoming a coach and business owner.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Yes, you get a job, you stay there forever, and you get the gold watch, and as it used to be, at the end of your tenure, and you retire, and then you start to travel. And so many times I've seen that situation play out, and people don't get to retire and travel. Often they die, and they just leave that joy for retirement. And they certainly in the world that I've observed over the years, leave those passion projects to retirement or to being part-time. And the beauty of the world we're living in now is that we can look at those things that we're passionate about. And if we are really that passionate and we think we want to do this as a business, so long as we do the research around it and determine, one, that there is a market for that thing that we're passionate about, and it can that market pays, and if they pay, we can actually make a living doing it. If we can answer all those questions, then the way in which our world is evolving through the use of technology, we can create businesses. And and sometimes if we have an area that we want to work in that's solving a world problem or a community problem, we are able to work in that space now. And I find that incredibly exciting. And that's actually why with one of the things that I'm doing, I'm so focused on ongoing education, because I've always been a teacher of something from the very earliest of my days. If my mother was still alive, she would tell you that I would accompany her to church, and while she was in church, I was teaching all the little children, the really little ones. I was probably about 10 at the time. Sunday school. I was doing Sunday school, and I would spend hours preparing lessons for them on whatever it was, and so proudly teach this stuff. And then at other points in my life, when I was at university, I was a part-time tutor for the younger university students. Then I taught sewing and tailoring, and I've taught cooking, so I'm a really good cook. And at early days in my life as a young teenager, I thought I was going to be a school teacher, but then
I'm just getting something here. Was that kind of a hidden talent you took for granted all your life? Because it seems like you just always did it, but didn't really pay attention to, this could be something I could turn into something.
I think I'm always teaching. I love teaching skills. I mean, now what I do in part is I go into businesses and I transform them. I'm taking entrepreneurial businesses that are ready for the next stage. They're ready to grow or scale up, and they're very entrepreneurial at the moment, but there needs to be a lot more rigor, a lot more system in place for them to scale. And so I go in there and transform them in a leadership kind of way and help them. And that's teaching. It's just another form of teaching. As we speak today, I'm potentially working with a new client in Singapore, and he's got a business that he can regularly get to 2 million turnover and very, very profitable. He said, but I just can't get it to 5, and I want to get it to 5. And that's because it's been built around him, and it's not a systemic business. And so we're talking about the possibility of me being an interim general manager, chief executive, if you like, to transform that business to take it to where he wants to go. And it's in a market that, yes, there is a market. That market is growing. It's highly profitable. They're at the high end of that niche. But because it's been centered around him to date, it's failing. It's breaking down because structures are not in place. So re-educating the staff. So it's another form of teaching, and that's what I'm really passionate about. And then not all businesses aspire to being that big, and that's where my other business, Small Business Huge Success, comes into play.
Yeah. That's amazing, Adele. And what I'm picking up from this, you said a couple things that were very important. So anyone listening, and I hope you take notes to that. And you said, hey, you have a passion that's great, and you ask yourself a couple questions. Is this passion something, one, that the public wants, needs, and is willing to pay for? And is it scalable? Because also you don't want to be actually owned by your business where now you got to work for it. I've heard a number of business owners come in saying, I didn't know what I was getting into, that I didn't think about how to make this process of me doing my passion where I'm not the only one that has to do everything. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be that it's scalable so that you don't need to be there every single day. If you get sick, the business keeps on moving.
Oh, absolutely. Don't get me started on all of that because I could go forever. But what I would say is I would reference Michael E. Gerber's book, The E-Myth. And back in the 90s, and just a little bit of history here, I set up my business, which was called McLay & Company back then. And within a month or two of setting it up, and I had 4 or 5 staff, I got sick. I had a relapse of glandular fever. And so brand new company, I was the major revenue generator. I had to continue working, and I would get to 6 p.m. at night and collapse, and then all weekend just lie in bed or lie around recovering. So I was so exhausted. And it was at that time I picked up his book, The E-Myth, because I wasn't able to do anything else in the weekend. I read it. And it was one of those moments in time where this enormous light bulb went off. And I got the power of creating a system and working on your business rather than in it. And it was because of that we were able to create what my team fondly referred to as the McLay way of doing business. And it was absolutely because of that we were able to scale the business into the business it became with 20 staff, 2 offices. Yes, it was reliant on me, but not so reliant on me that I had to work it all day, day in, day out forever.
Mm-hmm. And basically, was it, Adele, that I know myself too, it is hard to let go of things that are part of your passion or your business. You feel like, I do it so well, I know it so well, who could do it as well or have the intensity to do it as well as I do it. But that's the wrong mindset, because there's plenty of people out there looking for a good job and who really don't want to own their own business, but are really willing to work hard and help you bring your vision to light. Is it really the letting go portion that a lot of entrepreneurs have a problem with?
Yes, I'm quite tough when I hear that. I think that's a slightly arrogant statement, and so I'm quite good at having honest conversations with business owners who think like that, because I think some of it's about fear. I think it's also about the fact that they don't have systems and they can't easily let people into the business because they haven't created a system within the business. And so when I talk them through what it might look like, and it's not to say that all business owners want to be multi-million-dollar turnover businesses with all that busyness and risk and whatever else comes with it. But when you break it down for them as to what the business could look like, then they become a little bit more humble and start thinking about, well, yes, actually, right now I am absolutely tied to my business. If I fell over, got sick, got hit by a bus, I have nothing. And what is the impact of that on my lifestyle, on my family, if I can't work? And generally it's tremendous, because not many business owners have resources, financial particularly, where they can afford to not work for a while. So I unpick that pretty quickly to support business owners to think about their business in a proper business-like way.
So besides systems, because you've worked with a lot of business owners, coaches and otherwise, from working with them, what have you seen that a lot of small business owners do that are detrimental to their business?
Oh, can I turn that and say, what do they not do?
That's fine.
A lot of people get into business having worked for somebody else, and they think, oh, well, they're doing really well in business. I've got the same skill. I can do this too. So they have the technical skill around what it is. It might be they're a great florist or an electrician or a plumber or a website designer, whatever. But they don't understand the fundamentals of business. So they set up their business, and then it's a case of, well, where do I get clients from? So they haven't. The first issue is they don't have a clear understanding of what their business model is. I mean, in most cases, they won't know what that means. And so we have to work out what is the business model under which you're going to operate your business, and then your business strategy. And I don't want those words to sound very corporate and big. This is not meant to be tomes of writing in a manual that sits on the shelf. This is simple stuff. So getting clarity around that, and there's a whole lot of other things in there. So the purpose, the vision, the values. Values in an organization is really important, particularly if you're going to grow. Branding, I'm less worried about branding in small businesses to start with, but certainly very interested in the idea of the owner being branded, personally branded as the expert. How are they going to stand out from the crowd to be seen as the expert? So that's a topic that occupies me a lot and was the subject of my last book. So it's the marketing, channels to market, sales. We're afraid of sales, business owners. So a lot of people don't know how to do that. The finances, a lot of small businesses really only get their accounts done at year end for tax purposes. So they don't have a clue what is going on with the financials in their business throughout the year. And cash flow is a fairly ongoing challenge for businesses. Then if they are looking to grow a team, it's how you recruit the right members of the team. And I'm very much into recruiting for values and certain skills, some of the skills, because you can often teach a lot of the skills. So there's some of the things that I think about and talk about with clients.
Wow. And that's a lot in there to look at and pay attention to. I had a recent business owner I talked to, and he said, the deal with me is that and I think fear is really the premise of it, really. But he was like, hey, if I hire someone, for one, I lose at least $50,000 in a paycheck per year that I have to pay them, because you have to pay them some decent amount of income. And then that's part of my profit loss. And I could just do it myself. And I said, but look at this. You hire them, you can do double the work. And hence, then you can grow your business that much more, and then it won't be losing $50,000. It could be making an extra $150,000. So I think, what you're talking about there is really about fears. And I think when you come in, you start to show them, listen, you're not working off a real system here. You just kind of willy-nilly do your billing here every 6 months. One billing owner I talked to, because I help people with their finance and really look at their receivables. I talked to one company. He was doing his billing willy-nilly, 6 months here, every 3 months there, and wondering why they couldn't pay their people and their vendors. Well, that's because you're not doing your billing. They can't pay you if you don't send out your bills.
Oh, absolutely. Well, my first book was called Big Profits, and some of the book was about that. I started the book on cash flow, and within that I talked about the billing cycle, and how we need to rethink how we invoice our clients. And there are some businesses where you can get payment in advance. And for those who do that, fabulous. And there are many situations where that can occur. We just don't think about it like that. There are some where you can bill right there and then after you've done the work, and some perhaps at the end of the week. I don't believe in this end of month or random situation. Yeah. I don't generally believe in 30 days. It's about communication with your client, and sometimes it does depend on who your client is. But if it's business to consumer, when they're calling you, let's say you're an electrician, and we all need electricians. When they're calling to book you in, you really need to clearly state up front, this is how we operate. And it might be that we do the work and we expect someone to be on site to pay on debit or credit card there and there. Will you have someone there who has a debit credit card to pay? Yes, no. Okay, well, if there's no one there, we're not able to come. This is how we operate. There are loads of ways to deal with cash flow, and it's just being creative around it and being really clear in your communication with your potential customer, so they know in advance what to expect.
That's great, Adèle. And in fact, I remember working with a client about 4 years ago that had all of their all of their vendors and customers on a net 30 basis, and they're a product and a high-end product at that. And so I said to them, this is kind of nuts. They walk out with their expensive whatever, and then 30 days later they say, oh yeah, I liked it. I'll just keep it and pay you whenever, because now you have no leverage. They walked out with your really expensive product and you have nothing. So I had to work them through, and they've been in business for a while, to work them through the idea that you can ask for half up front. Now, some of them would ask for the product to be made from beginning to end. I said, okay, they come in to get the product, they're paying full out before they leave the door. Now, if they're going to have the product made for them, whatever amount of it they're going to get made for their shop or such, we're going to ask them for 50%, yes. and then the 50% when they come to pick up the goods. And they're like, oh, they'll never agree to that. No, we're going to lose so many clients. I said, no. Anyone with a half of understanding in business would understand that this is how it works in business. You're not going to do free work here, and you're losing more and more business by the day. So what we're going to do is at the negotiation table, when they come in to do the PO, we're going to explain how things now operate. And I will be there to help walk them through it. And we did. And we got some resistance, like, oh, that's not how we've done it. We've done business here for 14 years. I'm like, I understand that, but in order to keep our costs the way we have kept them for you, because you're on a special rate and such, we need to do this. And you do understand, as a business owner, you would never let someone out of your shop without paying for a dress or whatever it is they buy from you, right? They said, well, so after having a kind of honest conversation with most business owners, they understand, because they're in the same boat. They wouldn't let someone walk out of their store with a product that they hadn't paid for. So, it's just really having the honest conversation and being straight up with your clients, as you said.
Absolutely. And sometimes you actually give them ideas around how one's terms of business could be different, because people just don't think about this. They do what they think is normal and usual, and there's no normal these days.
In actuality, this company, when I went on, they started to follow my advice, we were able to grow their business at least 3 times in just a matter of a year. And they didn't lose a huge amount of customers. They lost a couple small boutiques because they just said, we can't handle that. But on the most part, they actually grew. And that's what it takes, really just stepping out and being okay with what happens. There might be some losses, but there will definitely be some gains if they're honest decisions are made with your client, not just throwing it at them. They just show up for their product. Okay, give me your money. And you didn't tell them ahead of time at the time of signing the contract.
Yeah, it's about respect. It's about
absolutely
you being respectful of your client, but also them being respectful of you and your need to run a successful and profitable business. And if there's not mutual respect, then you don't have a good working relationship, and it's not going to last. And the cheapest client to have is a repeat purchaser client, and you have to nurture that by open and frank conversation.
Absolutely. What is your take with your clients on contracts? Because I do not have enough I cannot have enough conversations with people about contracts. Often I'll go to a small business owner or even medium-sized business owners and a couple of large ones who just do not put everything in writing. And I'm like, if it's not in writing, it doesn't count. I know that your salesperson says, he's best buddies with this shop or this person, but people forget things. One person you say to, they think you mean this, but you actually meant that. You put it in writing, they both sign it. There's no ambiguity of what the contract or what the agreement is between two parties.
Absolutely. I'd go a step further, and depending on the level of sophistication of whatever it is the contract's about, it needs to go through a lawyer or attorney, as you say in America, because again, the technical expert, you're good at what you do. You will not be a lawyer. You will not be that confident at writing contracts. And contracts, they're only a problem when parties fall out, and then they're subject to interpretation. And I've seen, in fact, a friend of mine in New Zealand, before we came here, he did not spend enough money employing a good solicitor, lawyer, to draft up a franchise contract with one of his franchisees, and he ended up, long story short, but the business was in trouble, and he ended up losing the whole of his business to one of the franchisees because of the poor drafting of the contract. It was just horrendous, and the guy was bankrupted. And I tried to help him as best I could, but the fundamental problem was the dreadful contract that was in place. And we did litigate it in court to try and resolve it in his favor, and that was not possible. So he was bankrupted. I mean, that was a long time ago now. That's 10, 12 years ago probably. But it's devastating. It's completely devastating when a contract is subject to some kind of debate or at worst litigation, and it's been poorly drafted. Everything should be properly documented. That's about a company being professional as well. And when it's not that potentially litigious, you can have heads of agreement or service agreements, which you can draft up in-house. But again, if you're not great with language, you still might want to get a third party who's better at this situation to write it for you so it looks professional. But certainly any agreements you're entering into with a external party should be in some form of contract.
Oh, that is a good point you ended there with, because I had a problem 2 years ago where I did a contract with a particular party, and I thought it was very easy to understand, made sense, and I had difficulty at the end of our time together really sealing it up because we had differences of understanding the language in it. Mm-hmm. So the next contract I drew up, I promptly hired someone who's a really good linguist and an attorney to make sure we don't have that problem going forward, to structure us a contract going forward for all future business. So very good point there. But I don't want us to leave without the audience finding out how they can find out more about you, work with you, and all that good stuff.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you, Christina. Well, my personal website is AdèleMcLay.com. And do you need me to spell that, or have you got a link somewhere on this audio?
We will have a link, but spell it all the same. It can't hurt.
Thank you. AdèleMcLay.com. Mm-hmm. And that's my personal website. My business website is smallbusinesshugesuccess.com, and that's collaborative. There are lots of bits and pieces there that we're working on. And I'm on all social media. I do quite a bit on Instagram, which is at Adèle McLay, on Twitter, the same handle, Small Business Huge Success on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, which is Adèle McLay Fan, and LinkedIn, a lot on LinkedIn. Now, I would ask that if you are going to link in with me, write a personal message. Just don't put one of those standard LinkedIn messages out there, but you write a personal message and say that you heard Christina and I speaking and you'd like to connect, because I'm more inclined to connect with you when I know where you've come from rather than just the crusty old LinkedIn message that sits there, although that is changing. LinkedIn is changing their systems right now. So, I don't think they have those crusty old messages anymore on the new format. Mm-hmm.
No, but that's a good point. I think sometimes people just throw out follows and friendship stuff. And if you really want to connect with people and find new people to be part of a new tribe that you feel is congruent with you, really get to talk to those people. Send a personal message, not like on Twitter. I see people send those messages that are like, buy my thing, thanks for follow. I'm like, I don't know you yet. If you send a, hi, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to our ongoing relationship. Something real, something authentic.
Oh, I agree. I just ignore those Twitter ones that come through as you've described. I almost want to go delete.
Remember that.
Most people don't know how to sell. They don't know how to build relationships. Social selling, it's not how you do it.
That's right. Well, Adèle, it's been so fabulous having you out here this morning and discussing this. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy Business Radio and sharing your great wisdom and talent today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Christina.